on and how the economic prospects are going to be going on as we move forward. Now we start with matters IATA. 28 countries have signed up for a single African air transport market, but only 8 are operationalizing this particular policy. Single African air transport market is a project of the African Union to create a single market for air transport in Africa. Once completed in force, the single market is supposed to allow significant freedom of air transport in Africa.
Because as an agreement and a protocol signed, it doesn't mean that it will happen on its own. It requires a lot of legwork and it requires a lot of preparations for it to bring, to be brought to life. Having the proper regulatory environment and regulations within each country of those 28 is a must before, SATAM can come to life.
All right, still on matters at Transport, Kenya Airways plans to recruit at least 20 pilots and contract and reduce its flights until new pilots are online and active. KQ says it's lost an estimated $50 million due to crew shortage in 2018. Now Brenda Kerubo speaks to KQ CEO Sebastian Mikush on the sidelines of the IATA conference.
All right, so we're here live at the Radisson Blu where the IATA Forum is currently underway, and some of the findings from the key stakeholders who have been speaking, of course the aviation stakeholders, have indicated the fact that Africa needs more infrastructure. It also needs to incorporate digital transformation and at the same time open up its skies so that to encourage more traffic and at the same time build on the aviation sector as a whole on the continent. But someone who's more familiar in relation to this is the principal host, Kenya Airways, of course, will be speaking to the Chief Executive Officer, Sebastian Mikush. Sebastian, Kenya Airways plans to get at least 21 captains, pilots for that matter. But are you reading on the same page when it comes to the current pilots who are actually working for Kenya Airways? Because, they are saying that of course, they're going to be hired on contract basis, but are you reading from the same page when it comes to hiring? There have been issues around it, even an impending strike, legal action in relation to this. Talk to us a little bit about this.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm very cautious with words, or at least I try to be cautious with words. We are in line with the pilots. We are not in line with the union of the pilots. And the fact that the union has an opinion doesn't mean that all the pilots have the same opinion. And actually, we are not very much in line with the union because we think that we've reached a point in which blocking us the capacity of hiring Kenyan pilots is extremely detrimental to the airline, even though it could be improved and it could be much faster and cheaper.
And KQ wants to hire them on a temporary basis?
It's correct, and we cannot hire them on permanent basis because the union has guaranteed itself that if we do it, we cannot afford it, because then we would have to raise significantly the salaries of all other pilots. So it's very tricky, and we actually don't see the reason to hire them on permanent basis because we believe that we should be creating more jobs and more career opportunities through the system that exists today. Again, a very inefficient system and a very beneficial system to the union, but if we bring those pilots for 2-3 years, the time we can grow internally our own capacities, they can just go, and they will go, because that's the problem. The moment we have enough pilots, we will not need to hire anyone from outside. And we are also, as management, quite vocal about it, that we need more pilots because we have more sales capacity, more network capacity, so we need more crew. And this is what we are doing, because this is the only way, I believe, for the airline to merit the support it has today.
What are some of the impacts that Kenya Airways has had because of a pilot shortage, the pilot shortages that you're talking about? And exactly how many flights have you cancelled so far in relation to this?
We cancelled more than 200 flights during the peak summer, which represents roughly 2 days of our business because of crew shortages, which costed us more or less from $45 to $55 million, depending. So we say it's 50 million because we did not calculate all the negative impacts. And of course, that has a principal main problem, which for me as CEO is completely unacceptable. We are disturbing passengers and creating a very bad reputation of non-reliable airline. And I was myself under strong pressure, and all of my teams were under strong pressure. Why are you having delays? Why are you canceling? You know, in the life of an airline, cancellations, delays are always part of the business. We have technical problems, we have weather issues. We can have different challenges, and safety will always prevail over the comfort. But here we are hampering the comfort just because of, I would say, really out of the time regulations. Because the same group of pilots could fly more if the union was more inclined to give us flexibility that we require. I consider that my duty is to find a solution. We've been very strongly supported by the government since many years. Please remember the sovereign guarantee, all type of interventions. And I consider that our duty is to deliver the connectivity. And when we promise that we'll fly more, just to fly more. And moreover, I consider also, which we're advocating in the white paper and in many documents, that we can create more jobs. So this is what we are doing. But if I want to create jobs, I cannot first decrease the airline. I have to hire pilots, train them. In parallel, somebody else needs to fly. And I was, somehow surprised, frustrated, and even emotionally touched that somebody accuses us of wanting to hire in foreigners. Actually, we are targeting to hire Kenyan pilots, both young guys that will enter the airline for a normal career, and contract pilots, which most of them are former KQ pilots. So we actually refused to hire foreign pilots, also because of administrative complexity of bringing a foreign pilot, work permits, visas, the exams, etc. It's just more efficient for KQ to hire people who have local licenses. It's very simple. And if you go to any airport like Wilson, you have tons of people who fly aircraft. So for me, I think it's a difficult moment. Of course, it's an emotional moment. But I believe that that's the duty of the management. That's what we have to do, and that's what we are doing while explaining why we're doing this.
Talking about former Kenyan pilots, who are these? I mean, are these people who retired before? Are these people you're going to maybe source from other airlines, maybe Kenyan pilots who went to other airlines like the Gulf carriers? Are this where you're going to poach them from?
First of all, there are not only Kenyan pilots in Kenya Airways, hopefully so. There are pilots throughout Kenya. And yes, indeed, the union itself was saying that there was a big problem because we lost many pilots. And it was true, we lost pilots who went because the airline was not offering them any career potential. No future network, no more aircraft. This is what we are trying to do. And it's a chicken and egg situation. How do you want a responsible board to take more aircraft if you are not assured that you can have crew to fly them? So I think that just bringing more crew will allow us to fly the fleet that we have today and future fleet. Yes, there are pilots which are working abroad, which are eager to come back. There are also former Kenyan colleagues of ours who just left the airline for various reasons. Flying an aircraft is a pretty constraining job. It's not an easy thing. There are people who just don't like this type of life, and they are pilots for a time, and then they leave. And they would be very eager to fly for 20 hours per month, 30 hours per month, without coming back to the airline. We have pilots from, of course, Gulfs, who are looking at an opportunity of coming back home, and this opportunity is there because the airline will be growing. We have people who are in other African countries, mainly they also maybe went there for financial reasons or for family, different reasons. It's only 21 pilots that we're looking at, maybe a little more, but it's not even 5% of all the pilots we have today in the airline. So we are not hiring every pilot in Kenya, but we are just looking and hiring a group of people who will stay with us for a time, and they will not in any way hamper the career of the people who are with us today.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. We have been speaking to Sebastian Mikos, the Chief Executive Officer of Kenya Airways. Of course, key takeaways, Kenya Airways is in need, of course, to grow the fleet, to grow the gross domestic product, and to create jobs as a whole. Back to you in studio.
Well, on to that is actually